Dear students, I wish you a very good day. We can see another topic in the Empire Writes Back. The title of the topic is Comparisons Between Two or More Regions. The erstwhile colonists, the former colonists, could express their tradition and culture through literature, and it has given rise to theories and models. And these theories and models can be used to study the post-colonial literature. And if you think of the colonial education system, it was centered on the standards laid down by the empire. The colonies were expected to follow the educational system recommended or imposed upon the people, upon the colonies. Though the colonies attained political independence, even after the political independence, they remain oppressed under colonial domination. They got only political independence, and still the colonies are dependent on the center, on the empire, on the European colonizers for culture and tradition. Because the culture and the tradition, the Western culture and tradition, were imposed upon the colonies during colonization. They couldn't be free from this kind of oppression even after they have got political independence. And these colonies have been trying to break the colonial pattern of standard, the standard set by and imposed on the colonies in everything, in all aspects of life, in education, in administration, in culture, in the tradition, in language. So the set standard have kept them under control, have kept the colonies under control, the erstwhile colonies under control. So they want to break the colonial pattern of standard. And they have been struggling to replace it with the literary and cultural traditions of their own. These literary and cultural traditions have been shared by all the colonies. So, in the Empire Writes Back, the first chapter is Cutting the Ground. It discusses how post-colonial literature can create a sense of identity. So they want to prove their identity through their literature, through post-colonial literature. And it challenges, post-colonial literature challenges the European cultural dominance. And then only when they are free from the European cultural dominance, they can assert their identity. And we have been seeing the second topic now, comparison between two or more regions. It focuses on how the colonial experience of different regions, how their colonial experiences are compared. The colonial experiences of different regions can be compared. And what is the purpose of comparing them? To highlight, to bring out, to point out the common themes and the differences. The differences are unique. What kind of common themes have been handled in the post-colonial literature of different regions? And what kind of differences can be identified in their literature, though they have been and as they have been produced, created by different regions. These regions are the former colonies. And why should we make this comparison? This comparison helps us to understand the complex relationship between languages, because these regions may have different languages of their own, and the language of the colonizers. So what kind of relationship? The relationship is not a simple one, it is a complex one. So the complicated relationships between languages, cultures, and in their education, and it can be studied in various post-colonial contexts. In the post-colonial literature produced by these regions. Now we can see the kinds of or the types of comparison. There are three principal types of comparison, three different kinds, very important types of comparison. The comparison is between the literatures produced by the authors of white diaspora. And we can have an example for this. White diaspora here are the white settlers. They have migrated from their native country for settlement in the places or in the regions which they have colonized. And this is what is called white diaspora, the white immigrants who have shifted to the colonies for different purposes. They might have been administrators, or they might have sought their fortune there. They might have been as missionaries. And so anyhow, so now comparison can be made between the literatures produced by such white settlers. They are called the authors of white diaspora. An example is given. It is J.P. Matthews' Tradition in Exile. This book is written by J.P. Matthew. So here we see the comparison between poetry written in Canada and Australia. And here we have white settlers. They are also immigrants, white immigrants. And the next kind of comparison is between the literatures of black diaspora. Now you can understand the meaning of black diaspora. The black people who have migrated to other places. Some of them might have been enslaved, or they went there for work under contract, or they might have gone there to seek their fortune, as the white settlers did. And so these people, especially now we can have an example. So we can see such a comparison among the black people, black immigrants. Literature written on black immigrants. It is what is called black diaspora. And so we can see some writers from these regions. Moore, Googie, Griffiths. These people, these writers are black writers. They made a comparison of literatures of West Indian nations, literatures produced in West Indian nations with the literature of African countries or with the black American writing. So it can serve as a good example for literatures of black diaspora. The third kind of comparison can be seen now. This is a comparison between the literatures of both white and black diaspora. So the literature produced by the post-colonial literature produced by the white, the writers from the white settlers and the writers from black diaspora. And we can see such a comparative study that has been written recently. It is about the Australian convict literature and West Indian slave literature. Australian convicts would have been, it's a white settlers, the place of white settlers, and West Indian slave literature. And so it is a good example for the comparative study between the white and black diaspora. So we have to understand this one. Post-colonial discourse has covered wide areas of both white and black diasporas. They have analyzed the conflict in the minds of immigrants, both white immigrants as well as black immigrants in the erstwhile colonies, and the problems they faced in using the language, in following their culture. So this kind of conflict is quite common between the white settlers, the white immigrants as well as black immigrants. So the comparative study can bring out the struggles, the suffering and the conflict experienced by the white as well as black immigrants. So we can use in simple terms the post-colonial writers from different regions. Different regions, here they might have been from Africa, the Caribbean, India or Australia. And what is common among them? They face similar problems faced by any immigrant. A race has nothing to do with it. White race, the people belonging to white race or black race. They faced similar common problems because they were once colonized by European powers, European colonizers. Anyhow, we can see how they responded to colonization. Their response to colonization was not the same. It varied, it differed based on their specific experiences, peculiar experiences they had, they faced in the colonies. So this kind of response is based on their experiences, local cultures and histories of their own colonies. And we can see that some regions were heavily influenced by European language and culture. They cannot be free from this kind of influence. So they have been using European languages and culture. But some immigrants have liked to or wish to keep their indigenous traditions alive. They would like to, these immigrants would like to reclaim their indigenous traditions and culture and their language even. So when we make a comparison of the literatures produced in these regions, and it has been a great challenge to the critics and scholars. Making a comparative study of the literatures produced in these regions have been a great challenge to the critics and scholars, because they can see, they struggle to see, they try to see the patterns inlaid in this literature. And they could bring out how the colonized people resisted, opposed the dominance of European culture, European language, and European values. Because they would like to embrace their own language, their own culture, and their own values. And if we see the themes used by these writers of different regions in post-colonial literature. And the use of language has tried them, has been a great challenge once again. It has been a challenge to them. What kind of language they could use? Whether they could use their own native language, or whether they can go for the language imposed on them by the colonizers. It is well known that European colonizers thrust their languages on the people they ruled. And it has been a dilemma for the writers in post-colonial countries to choose the language for their literature. And some of them preferred to write in European languages. It could be English or Spanish, Portuguese, French, right. They chose to write in European languages. While other people tried to reclaim, to revive, or use their native languages. That is how they could prove their identity. They could free themselves from the colonial domination. So when we compare the different regions, it has become very clear to us how language was used as a tool of oppression. The language was used to oppress the colonized by the colonizers. They used the language as a tool to oppress them. The same language can be used by the colonized after freedom to reclaim their identity, to reclaim their culture, to reclaim their tradition, to reclaim or to establish, to assert their identity. So language plays a vital role, and it has served the purpose of both the colonizers as well as the colonized. And we can see it in some regions. When writers used the European language for literature, they have not used it as such, as the language was used or has been used by their natives, by the European writers. These colonized, the post-colonial writers infused European language, have blended the European language, have mixed the European language with their own language, with their own culture, to express their ways of, to convey their ways of expression. And they have used language only as a vehicle to express their culture and their own expressions. It is something great. It is something different. While some people, some writers, some post-colonial writers have got a tendency to reject the colonizers' language completely, altogether. They have nothing to do with the colonizers' language. Then only they could prove, they could establish their identity. They could be completely free from the colonizers' domination. This kind of comparison of the literatures written in various post-colonial regions can highlight some great values. And now we can see what kind of values have been highlighted by post-colonial literature created in regions. So it has become a way, the literature has been used as a way to cut the ground, to oppose, to withdraw, or to keep themselves away from the Western influence. That is what is called cutting the ground. Withdraw their support and going away from the influence, to extricate the influence, to be free from the influence. They don't like to be under colonial authority. So it has given chance for them to become completely free in all aspects, not only in politics. They demand freedom of all kinds. And the writers have been using their works to challenge the idea. And what idea has been challenged by these people? That the European ways of thinking and writing are not superior, as it has been emphasized by the Western, by the Europeans themselves. So it is in no way superior to the thinking and writing of the post-colonial writers. And they could prove it through their literary works, because they could rewrite their own history from their own point of view, from the perspective of the colonized. So the history has been rewritten from the point of view of the colonized, of the post-colonial writers, because they can articulate their experiences, they can give voice, they can articulate their own experiences and assert their own cultural identity. To conclude, we can have the recap. The particular section of the chapter, chapter 1, emphasizes. It makes it very clear how comparing regions can help the people understand, can help the scholars, can help the students, and the people who are interested in post-colonial literature can understand the diversity that can be found in post-colonial writing produced in different regions. They are different from one another. And at the same time, some common features can be found in their struggles, in their writing. They can be called commonalities. And language and identity are the central themes. These are the central themes. Language and identity are the central themes of the post-colonial literature produced by writers belonging to different regions. These comparisons can show, reveal different regions. We learn about different regions who try to reclaim, to bring back their culture and their own voice. They want to articulate their voice. They want the world to listen to them. After colonization, after they have attained political freedom. So we can understand the struggle faced by the people of the erstwhile colonies, and how they want to prove themselves. They want to find a place equal to that of the Western countries. I hope it will be materialized, it will be realized soon. Thank you for listening. I hope you may understand the topic. I'll see you again soon. I wish you all a very good day. Thank you.